Hi everyone, welcome to the channel Sluggers Blue for your CAT VRC preparation. In today's session, we'll be taking up an RC which was asked in your CAT exam in the year 2001. I've titled the RC as the Union Government and Discrimination. 633 words, 5 questions. This is the first part where I'll be taking you through the passage in quite some detail. And in the second part of this session, I'll be taking you through the questions. We'll be discussing the questions. The link to the second part and the link to attempt the passage as well are both the links are available in the description of the video. Okay, so you can check that out there. All right, so let's start. Okay, now for those of you who might be watching these sessions for the first time, I'll just take you very briefly through the structure of the sessions. See, every single session caters to one RC, okay, and a session is made up of two parts. The first part is where I explain to you the passage in detail, paragraph by paragraph, and the second part is where I take you through the questions, where we discuss the questions. Okay, you are expected to have attempted the passage and read the passage and attempted the questions by yourselves. The link to do the same is available in the description of videos of both the parts. Okay, all right, now 40 such sessions make up a course that is titled as an Anthology of RCs for your reading comprehension preparation for the CAT. All right, so I hope that's clear. Let's start. Okay guys, so see, the way we'll go about understanding the passages, you have your screen visible, right, on your device. Now it is split into two parts. On the left side of the screen you can see the passage. On the right side is a blank space which will be filled by schematic diagrams as we read the passage. I'll be using these schematic diagrams to explain to you in detail every part of the passage. As simple as that. Okay, so yeah, let's start. Okay, so starting with paragraph 1. The Union government's present position vis-a-vis the upcoming United Nations conference on racial and related discrimination worldwide seems to be the following. Discuss race, please, not caste. Caste is our very own and not at all as bad as you think. Okay, so the idea the author is trying to convey here is very straightforward, that uh, so far as the upcoming conference in the UN with respect to race and related discriminations is concerned, the union government's position is kind of a little objectionable, where the government, the author is almost tried to impersonate the take up the persona of the government, and has said that that the government is almost like saying, okay, so saying to the UN, to the people in the UN conference, that okay, please go on and discuss as much as you want about race and related discriminations, but so far as caste is concerned, please just leave that to us. Caste is something that is very personal to us, and please don't discuss that. Okay, so that's what the union government stand is with respect to the upcoming conference. This is not what the author says should be done. Okay, this is what the union government stand is. That's what the author has tried to convey here, and he has conveyed that in a slightly sarcastic and rhetorical manner, so you can understand that he's definitely not in agreement with this idea of the discussion on caste not being included in the overall discussion of race and other related discrimination at the UN conference. Okay, coming to the next part, the gross hypocrisy of that position has been lucidly underscored by Kancha Ilaiah. So we just note that the gross hypocrisy of this position has been very clearly underscored by some person named Kancha Ilaiah. Explicitly, the world community is to be cheated out of considering the matter on the technicality that caste is not, as a concept, tantamount to a racial category, or tantamount to a racial category. So he says that explicitly, on the face of it, the world community is going to be is almost it's almost like they are going to be cheated out of considering caste as part of the discussion, just based on the technicality, on the technicality which the author doesn't find very important. Yeah, and the technicality is that caste is not, he says, caste is not as a concept tantamount to racial categories. So that means that caste is not as a concept equivalent or can be compared to racial categories, right? Categories of caste cannot be compared, are not as tantamount or as equivalent to your racial categories. That's the technicality, and based on that, uh, the union government's point of view is that caste should not be discussed at this conference. Okay, that, guys, according to the author, is the explicit reason, is the reason that the government is providing on the face of it to the people everywhere in the world, to people outside of the country in the world, right? That's their position. That's the position that they have taken explicitly outside, for everyone outside. Then he says, uh, internally, however, That means, but so far as the discussion within the country is concerned, like amongst ourselves, if we were to discuss that whether should we, why should we not let discussion on caste be included in the UN conference, if that so far as that internal dialogue within the country is concerned, internally, however, allowing the issue to be put on agenda at the said conference would, we are patriotically admonished, damage the country's image. Okay, so internally the discussion, so far as the union government is concerned, is that internally it is telling us that okay, we cannot. It is admonishing us. It is almost berating us. It's being it's almost like asking us, like scolding us, okay, and saying that okay, we cannot let this caste discussion happen in the conference because it will bring down the image of the country, so like we should not be doing this. It might damage the country's image, and hence so that's how the union government is admonishing us. That's what the author says here, that explicitly on the face of it to the world, this is the technicality has been given as the reason, while beneath the under the beneath the technicality, beneath the explicit, the real reason internally discussed is that well, we cannot let this discussion happen there because then it will damage our reputation, okay, our image, the country's image. And then the author says after that somehow India's virtual beliefs elbow out concrete actualities, right? So he has made a comment on the same idea, like how the author has made a uh, comment on the difference between the explicit reasons and the internal reasons discussed. Okay, and he says that inverted representations, as we know, have often been deployed in human histories as balm for the forsaken. Now, what does he mean by that? So see, guys, inverted representations. Okay, now let's say these are the people of the country, and the union government is telling the people of the country that we cannot discuss the idea of caste discrimination. We cannot let a discussion on the idea of caste discrimination happen at the UN conference because it will damage the image of the country, and it's in your own good. It's telling the people of the country that it's in your own good, it's in the favor of the people of the country, that this might not, that this idea, that this discussion is not had at the UN conference. Okay, so it is in their own good because otherwise it will damage the image of the country. So that's what the author means when he says means by inverted representation. Okay, it means like, in fact, it is not in the benefit, it is not really going to benefit the people of the country if the discussion is not had here. But what has the government done here? They have inverted the representation. They've inverted the idea. They are instead saying that it is in your own good, when in fact it is not in their. It's not going to benefit them, right? It's not in their favor. Rather, what might be in their favor is for the masses, for the forsaken. He uses the word forsaken, right? For the forsaken, especially the people who are against which this discrimination works. Especially what is good for them is that if this discrimination is discussed at the union conference, right? So that's exactly that's something that will be good for them. But the government has inverted the idea. Okay, it says that no, it is not good for you if we discuss this caste discrimination at the conference, because then it will damage the image of your own country, right? So and that's what the author is commenting on. He says that inverted representations like these, okay, the it's for your own good idea, inverted representations, as we know, have often been deployed in human histories as balm for the forsaken. They are all often being deployed in human history to soothe the people who are actually facing the problems, to soothe the people who are actually facing the discrimination. Okay, no, this is for your own good, we are doing this for your own good, when in fact it is not for their own good. It just served as a balm to placate them. Okay, it's all right. Okay, all right. So I hope you understood that this was a slightly complex part. Okay, coming to the next part, and then he goes on to say that religion being the most persistent of such inversions, and usually religion happens to be the subject of such inversions usually. Okay, he just made that point, and then he goes on. Yet we would humbly submit uh, that if globalizing our markets is thought of as good for the national pocket, globalizing our social inequities might not be so bad for the masses of our people. So he says that, but like despite all of this, we would like to make an argument that, if globalizing our markets in the world, if opening up our markets to the world can be good for our national pockets, can be economically good for our country, maybe opening up a discussion on social inequities, social inequality in our society to the world can also probably be good for our masses, right? Similarly, so he has drawn a parallel here that if you're opening up the markets and we're benefiting from that, why not open up the structures of our society to the world so it can benefit our masses, right? So that's what he says, and then he goes on. After all, racism was as uniquely institutionalized in South Africa as caste discrimination has been within our society. Okay, so he says that, well, after all, and if the point is that caste is something that is very specific and very different from all the other kind of discrimination that is all over the world, he says that, well, even racism was quite institutionalized and very specific and quite different in South Africa, as caste discrimination is currently seems to be different in our society. Similarly, racism used to be very specific and different and unique in the society of South Africa, and yet then right, and why then can't we permit the world community to express itself on the latter? So why then can't we permit the world community to express itself on the caste discrimination that is apparent in our society? Why can't we do that, especially when with a fraction of the zeal with which through the years we pronounced on the former? So why can't we let the people in the world comment on this caste discrimination in our society when we already have been commenting on the racial discrimination in the countries like South Africa for such a long time? So if we can do it to those countries, why not open up the discussion on our own on the structural forms of our own society to the world, if we anyways have been doing it to other countries? So why not, if this, then why not this, right? So that's the point he makes here in the first paragraph. Overall, see guys, what the author has done here is he has basically expressed an objection with respect to union government's stand on a certain issue, and then he's logically substantiated his counterpoints to what the union government stand is, right? And quite well, as in fact, I would say. Okay, so let's move on to the next paragraph now. Okay, so next paragraph. As to the technicality about whether or not caste is admissible into an agenda about race, that the conference is also about related discriminations tends to be forgotten. A reputed sociologist has recently argued that where race is a biological category, caste is a social one. See, the author has tried to convey here is that so far as the technicality that he talked about earlier in the paragraph is concerned, well, and moreover, and then in the same sentence, he's also given a very small side note where he notes that people anyways tend to forget that the conference is not just about race but also about related discriminations. So probably caste, the discussion on caste should anyways be included, but anyways people forget that. So he just mentions that on a side note. The actual sentences from jumps right from agenda about race to a reputed psychologist, a sociologist, right? And then please note that whenever you have these braces, especially long sentences and braces within an actual sentence, you might often find it difficult to make sense of the overall sentence, right? And in such cases, what you should do is, in case you face difficulty in comprehension of that sentence, at least once try to read the sentence without the part that is given in the paragraph, because that is just an extra piece of information that the author is trying to provide you, and that's the reason why it is in the braces. Okay, so if you read this without the content in the braces, it will still make sense. As to the technicality about whether or not caste is admissible, not caste is admissible into an agenda about race, a reputed sociologist has recently argued that where race is a biological category, caste is a social one. See, right? So that does simplify the idea, and then you can like add the part in the braces or read it with the part in the braces and like get a better understanding. Okay. So what the author has tried to explain here is that so far as this technicality is concerned, where the government considered caste not to be equivalent to a category, and especially a racial category, and hence made a point that it should not be included in the conference. So far as the technicality is concerned, already a reputed sociologist has argued that if race is a biological category, caste is a social category. Okay, so caste is a social one. So what the author is trying to say is that the technicality has also been to a good extent violated. Now even that technicality doesn't hold true, because now people from areas such as sociology, etc., and reputed sociologists, they have themselves accepted that caste is also a category by itself, a category of discrimination by itself, and hence the technicality should also not also does not make any sense now. That's what the author is trying to convey. Okay, let's come to the next part. He says, having earlier fiercely opposed implementation of the Mundell Commission report, the said sociologist is at least to be complimented now for admitting, however tangentially, that caste discrimination is a reality, although in his view incompatible with racial discrimination. Now he simply makes a point that, well, given that this sociologist has now agreed that caste discrimination also exists as a category, caste is a social category and caste discrimination is real, we should appreciate that, although in his earlier stance he was opposed to the idea, which is demonstrated by his fierce opposition to the Mundell Commission report. Now the Mundell Commission report might have been something you don't need to be worried about it, because the author has not gone into the depths of it, right? So just know that the sociologist earlier may have not been in agreement with this idea, which as was exemplified in his opposition to the said report, but now he has finally accepted that caste as a social category and has also accepted the existence of discrimination as a reality. Although he still does maintain that uh, caste discrimination is incompatible with racial discrimination. So yes, at least partly he has accepted this in a way, and hence he should be appreciated. That's what the author says. Next he goes on. One would like quickly to offer the hypothesis that biology, in important ways that affect the lives of many billions, is in itself perhaps a social construction. But let us look at the matter in another way. Okay, so now the point the author is trying to make here is that, well, even after this sociologist accepted that yes, caste as a category exists and caste discrimination is a reality, still he has said that it is not compatible with race, because race is a biological category and caste is a social category, right? That means social is constructed by culture. Okay, and this is the part that the author tries to attack in the last part of the sentence. He says that one would quickly like to offer the hypothesis that what you're considering as a biological category, race, the point that you're using to differentiate between caste discrimination and race discrimination on the basis of that one is biological and the other is social, that is constructed by culture. Well, there is an interesting hypothesis which basically says that biology itself might also be a social construction. Okay, and then now you can understand that if biology also happens to be itself a cultural or a social construction, then whatever remainder of difference that this sociologist had cited between caste and race, that difference, even that difference will evaporate, right? There'll be no difference as such in that case, right? So that's the point the author is trying to attack the later part, where the sociologist still has not equated these two cases completely. Okay, so he says that biology itself might be a social construction. In that case, well, they can be considered the same, or at least on the same level, not the same, but at least on the same level. Okay, and but then he says that, okay, that there is a certain hypothesis which I feel tempted to offer, but let's look at it another way, and another way will be described in the next paragraph. So let's go there. Okay, coming to the next paragraph. If it is agreed, as per the position today at which anthropological and elite scientific determination rest, that the entire race of Homo sapiens derived from an originary black African female called Eve, then one is hard put to understand how on some subsequent ground ontological distinctions are to be drawn either between races or castes. Okay, so the author says that if we agree, according to disciplines such as anthropology and other sister scientific disciplines of anthropology, if according to these domains and disciplines, if we agree that the entire race of Homo sapiens came from one originary black African female called Eve, then it is hard to understand how people end up drawing ontological distinctions on the basis of amongst themselves and dividing all of them, dividing themselves in different groups and categories basis races and castes. Okay, now guys, ontological distinctions means that so whenever you try to form relationships between multiple groups or entities, and these don't have to be groups of people, it can be any idea or concepts. When we try to form relationships between multiple groups, entities, in terms of hierarchy, that okay, B is a subpart of A and C is a subpart of B, and A, B, C are mutually exclusive from D. So this structure is kind of an ontological distinction. You're trying to make ontological distinction between these groups here. Okay, so that's what he means. He means to say that it's very absurd to believe that after knowing, as per these domains and disciplines, that all of us came from just one person, one individual, that people start drawing these ontological distinctions that okay, this you are from this group and you are basis races, you are from this group and basis caste, you are from this caste. It's very absurd to know that people do that. Okay, and then he says, let us also underline the distinction between the supposition that we are all God's children and the rather more substantiated argument about our descent from Eve. Okay, next he says that let's also underline the distinction between, well, two distinct ideas with respect to the origin of humans. One is the supposition that we are all supposition is a hypothesis that we are all God's children, right? So that's one idea, that we are all God's children and we came from the same source. And the rather more substantiated argument, the other argument, which has more proof and which has more evidence with of our descent from Eve, the one that you already talked about, this argument. So let's draw a distinction between these two, unless of course if they happen to be equally diversionary, then it is not a problem, but otherwise let's draw a distinction. So that's what he says here, that let us also underline the distinction between the supposition that we are all God's children and the rather more substantiated argument about our descent from Eve, lest both positions are thought to be equally diversionary. If they are both equally diversionary, then it's not a problem, but lest they may not be, let's draw a distinction there. And then he goes on to say that, well, in any case, it then stands to reason. Then it stands to reason that all subsequent distinctions, like after the origin, in either of these two cases, like be it the supposition that we all came from, we are all God's children and we came from there, or the supposition that we all came, or the substantiated argument that we came from Eve, in either of the cases, all subsequent distinctions between people in terms of groups, be it caste or be it races, they are in modern parlance constructed ones. That means they have been constructed. They were not real. They didn't happen by themselves. They have been constructed by society, by culture. Okay, and like all ideological constructions, and these constructions, like all ideological constructions, are attributable to changing equations between knowledge and power among human communities through contested histories here, there, and elsewhere. Okay, and the way these have been constructed is mainly, so what he means to say here is that this construction of these categories and groups, etc., is attributable or can be attributed to how knowledge and power got divided or developed amongst various groups across the world, and using which certain groups became more equipped and started looking down upon the other groups, or the other groups that were not able to gain knowledge and power felt subdued by the other groups, and hence these distinctions. So mainly basis the changing equations of knowledge and power, these groups or these categories and groups were constructed across the world in the society, right? So that's what he says in this paragraph. Overall, what he has done here is he has tried to strengthen his argument by providing more scientific and scientific literature here, right? He talks about this Homo sapiens idea and anthropological ideas, and furthermore logic, right? So yeah, let's go to the next paragraph. Okay, so coming to the next paragraph, this line of thought receives thankfully extremely consequential buttress from the findings of the Human Genome Project. Okay, so the author says that this line of thought, that these categories of races and caste are actually constructed, they are not inherent. Okay, they have been created by the people themselves. This idea receives support from the findings of the Human Genome Project, right? And then he says, contrary to earlier chiefly 19th century colonial persuasions on the subject of race, as well as one might add the somewhat infamous Jensen offerings in the 20th century from America, those findings deny genetic difference between races. Okay, so he says that contrary to these earlier group of opinions Like one of them he has stated as colonial persuasions and the other as the Jensen offerings from America. The contrary to these group of opinions, which did not use to support this idea of uh, racism being a constructed construct, okay, so which did not use to support these, contrary to these group of opinions, the findings of the Human Genome Project, they do support the idea that this categorization is mainly constructed, not inherent. Okay, so and then he goes on to say that if anything, they suggest that if anything, these findings of the Human Genome Project, they suggest that environmental factors impinge on gene function as a dialectic seems to unfold between nature and culture. Now, what does that mean? It says that environmental factors impinge on gene function. That means your environment itself also your environment also has an effect on the biology. That means your environment, the environment in which the person lives, that is, it can be the biological environment as well as it can be the cultural environment, also has an effect on the gene itself. That means culture affects biology, right? So as a dialectic unfolds between culture and nature, what is the meaning of a dialectic unfolding culture between culture and nature? That basically means that the individual is formed, or people, the way they evolve, they don't just evolve just basis nature. Culture also has a role to play with it, right? So there is maybe culture affects the way the biology of the individual changes, and the biology of the individual changes the culture around him, and then again that changes the individual, and that changes the culture. So it's almost like a dialectic that is taking place between nature and culture, and hence through, and as an output of which the individual, the people, they evolve, right? So that's what he means to say here. He says that if anything, they suggest that environmental factors impinge on gene function as a dialectic seems to unfold between nature and culture. It would thus seem that biology as the constitution of pigmentation enters the picture first only as a part of that dialectic. Okay, taken together, taken together. Uh, okay, so what he, before taken together, in the last sentence he says that it would thus seem that biology as a constitution, as the constitution of pigmentation enters the picture first only as a part of the dialectic. That means even biology operates, even biology as a determining factor in the development or evolution of the individual, of the person, becomes a determining factor only as part of the dialectic. That's what he means to say, that even biology operates as part of the dialectic. It does not operate in a silo. Okay, so yeah, see, I just miss out the sentence so easily. Yeah. So next sentence says, taken together, the originary mother's stipulation, taken together the originary mother's stipulation, this idea that the author has described here, and the genome findings The OMS is for originary mother's stipulation, and HGP is for human genome finding. These, when taken together, they ought indeed to furnish ground for human equality across the board. So these two substantiating points, when we take together, which make the point that everyone is actually equal, and all these differences have been constructed by people themselves, right? They basically make a case for human equality uh, across the board, as well as yield policy initiatives towards equitable material dispensations, as well as yield policy. That means they support policy initiatives that should be focused towards equitable material distribution among everyone, without any difference, without taking into account constructed differences in terms of race or caste, right? So the distribution of resources should be equitable, irrespective of the caste or race or any other sort of discrimination. Okay, that as well as yield policy initiatives towards equitable material distributions aimed at building a global order, where in Hegel's stirring formulation, so he has cited a particular philosopher or probably a thinker here, aimed at building a global order. In Hegel's stirring formulation, only the rational constitutes the right. So trying to build equality, and via that and ensuring equitable distribution of resources without discrimination, while trying to build a world order, a global order, where the only thing that is right is that which is rational, that which is reasonable, that which is objective, okay, and not anything that is based on discrimination, okay. So such sadly, and then he closes on a slightly disappointing note, a sad note that but this is what it should be, right? This is what the author's perspective with how things should actually be is, right? This is how he feels things should be, given all of these reasoning and logic that he has given here. This is how things should be. But sadly, he says that is not the case, as every day fresh arbitrary grounds for discrimination are constructed in the interest of sectional dominance. But that is not the case, because as you can see, every day people come up with some random ideas, arbitrary ideas, to just create some differences, just to divide themselves into groups, and try to dominate. One group tries to dominate the other for some advantages. So sadly, what should be the case is not the case, and this is what people actually end up doing. Okay. So in the last paragraph, what the author has done here is he provides his own proposition that how things should be, given all the arguments that he has made, and then ends the passage on a slightly resigned note. Okay, so that's about your passage explainer, guys. Okay, guys, so coming to the central idea, it can be summed up in the following lines. Differences in peoples. Now, by the way, peoples is the correct usage of the word here. We use the plural form of people as peoples to refer to a large group, okay, of a certain ethnicity, basis ethnicity or basis some other factor. So the central idea goes, differences in peoples, biological or otherwise, are not inherent and are quite likely to be the product of an age-old dialectic between nature and culture, and thus shouldn't be taken to be the basis for discriminatory practices. However, that's not the case, as is exemplified in the hypocrisy of the Union government's stand with regards to caste discrimination. Okay, so that's the central idea. Let's go to the next part. Okay, guys. So with this, we have come to the end of the session. Now, for those of you who may have not attempted the questions, you can do so by by following the link which is given in the description of the video. And the others who have not seen the other RC videos, who would like to attempt the other RCs from this course and the Anthology of RCs, you can go to the playlist of this course on my YouTube channel, on the YouTube channel, by clicking here. It will lead you to the playlist. And yeah, so that's about the session. And if you like the video, let me know in the comments, and do subscribe to the channel. That goes for your CAT BRC preparation. Signing off.